Hello and welcome to part 2 of this finale for Dinosaur Jr. and we press on with Dinosaur Jr.'s 5th album, Where You Been, released in 1993. It came out through Black and White / Sire again, and it was produced by J Mascis. Again, obviously, Black and White standing for Blanco y Negro. I just don't want to keep saying that title in case I get into trouble. So there would be a few notable things about this album, most notably the shift to a more grungy style of sound. Obviously with Nirvana being quite popular at the time, grunge was very much in the early 90s, and Dinosaur Jr. were kind of incorporating that into the sound of this album, which I will talk a bit more about later on. We also have the debut of Mike Johnson on bass, replacing Lou Barlow. Obviously, if you remember from last time, Barlow and Mascis were not getting on quite well, and although having said that, on this album Mascis did actually allow Johnson as well as their drummer Murph to help out again, so it was nice that he was willing to be a bit more open with it and not just taking full control over everything. Having said that, he did still produce the album, so there you go. Among the things that Johnson and Murph were allowed to help with, Johnson actually contributed almost all of his bass parts. Murph was able to do almost all the drumming. Obviously, Mascis wasn't going to allow them to do all of that, but still, it did help. And Johnson even added a few guitar solos as well, as a suggestion, I guess you could say, and it did work, and once again, thank you Wikipedia for letting me quickly glance over you. Having said that, yeah, the album is still pretty stellar. I love how the grungy element works itself in. There's more of a thickness to the guitars in that way, and I like how, again, with this being a more group project than the past couple of albums were, it's really nice to hear everyone really getting apart. I was going to say Barlow. Murph still sounds great on the drums. Barlow wasn't even the drummer, he was the bassist. Johnson still, I was going to say still a really good bassist. No, he is a really good bassist for the time he's with the band, and Mascis is still a solid lead vocalist, still a really good guitarist as well. I think this might have some of the best guitar work on a Dinosaur Jr. album. In terms of production, it's still really solid, about what you would expect. Really nice technical direction, and I like the guitar focus as well. And honestly, just a really solid sound overall. It does carry its pacing really nicely. And again, grunge elements quite nice, worked in with the more punky vibe of the album. My favourite song goes to Get Me, and for the most part, Where You Been gets a lot of the things right of the band's sound. It's a really good debut from Mike Johnson on bass work, and it's really nice to have everyone just sort of working together a bit better again. I wonder how long that'll last. Next is the band's 6th album, Without a Sound, released in 1994. It has the same labels and producer as last time. So after the release of Where You Been, quite a couple of things happened. Notably, Murph left and was replaced by George Burrs. Sort of, we'll get to that immediately actually. So, for this album, Mascis again took complete control. He did all the drum work, all the keyboard work, all the vocals and guitar work. Mike was still allowed to contribute bass parts though, so that was nice. You know, Mascis wasn't a complete knob, and George, even though he did sort of join the band mostly for like live stuff, he didn't really contribute any of the drumming at all. And again, that's kind of clear considering that this album only came out a year after Where You Been did. But having said that, it was still a good album for the band, especially commercially. They did quite well. Obviously, you know, touring and putting out this album so soon after Where You Been, pretty smart idea from them, I have to admit. Having said that, yeah, the album is your typical Dinosaur Jr. fare, really well handled, really good production. Again, even though it is more of a J Mascis project, it is nice that Mike Johnson got to do some stuff. Hooray for Mike. Still a really solidly put together album too. It does suffer a little bit considering that like Murph isn't with the band anymore. Nothing against George. Well, actually, no, everything against George because he wasn't even on this one. And yeah, Mascis did the drumming, didn't he? Nothing against Mascis' drumming, but I feel like he was a bit too burnt out in some stages, and he definitely should have just stuck to vocals and guitar work and the keyboard too. I think him doing too much and him being kind of selfish about it really did some damage, I think we have to admit. But Mike got to contribute bass parts, and again, still similar lyrical themes. I'm sorry I haven't gone on over the lyrical themes a lot in these episodes. They just seem to be mostly about relationships and breakups and things like that from what I'm able to gather. Maybe some friendship stuff, considering that both Barlow and Murph had left the band by this point, but Mascis, I don't think, comes across as that petty. I don't think he even realises he's doing it, if it is on purpose. My favourite song goes to Mind Glow, and Without Sound is pretty solid, you know, good old-fashioned indie hardcore punk style things. And I'm glad that they ditched some of the grunge sound, because I think it would have been in bad taste considering that it was the same year that Kurt Cobain left this planet, so probably smart that. Next is the band's 7th album, Handed Over, released in 1997. It would be released again through Blanco y Negro and Reprise, and it was produced by Jay Mascis once more. So this would be the band's last album for a while. They would break up a couple of years after this would drop, and they would reform in 2007, which I'll cover for the next and last album of this particular part of the finale. And a part of it was because I think everyone was just kind of sick of Jay Mascis' shit by this point. And George Burrs did actually get to contribute drums on the 10th track, which I think is the last one. No, it was the 10th of 12. Mike Johnson still got to do his bass parts, and Jay, again, just mostly did the drums and the production and everything else. Once again, having said that, though, the album still continued to skyrocket the band. I guess sort of going after the grunge success and then completely ditching it somehow worked for them. It was a high-charting album. I don't really know where it charted. Got good reviews, though, for the most part. Really solid album. Again, it does sort of kind of blur into the whole Dinosaur Jr. album sounding like a Dinosaur Jr. album, but considering that I'm sort of enjoying the sound and have for all 12 of their albums, I'm not going to consider that as a bad thing. Guitars have more of a lightness to them. The drum work is still pretty good as well, and Jay Mascis has definitely improved as a vocalist. He's still got all the charisma, and he's still got a good emotion to him. It's just a shame his ego would typically get in the way, and I don't blame the band for breaking up after this one came out, but still really good work from him. Production-wise too, he's still got that going for him as well. My favourite song goes to Never Bought It, and again, really good album. Dinosaur Jr. doing good album stuff. Probably one of their weaker ones in terms of structuring. It does blur a little bit at certain points, but still pretty good for them. I enjoyed most of what I heard of it, so there you go. It's good. And lastly, for part 2, we reached the band's 8th album, Beyond. Released in 2007, it came out through Fat Possum, which is a great name for a record label, and it was produced by Jay Mascis again. So obviously with this one coming out a decade after the last one did, and this being their first since they broke up, it's their first one with their original lineup. Jay Mascis, front and centre on lead vocals and guitar work, Lou Barlow on bass and co-lead vocal work, and Murph on the drums again. Really nice to have them all back, although having said that, I do have the thing written here. Mascis and Barlow, obviously I did mention it quite a bit during the 90s, they were kind of getting sick of each other, and they would sort of come back together after playing some Sebado shows, which I think is a band that they used to be in, I don't really remember. But Barlow and Mascis met back up and basically had it out, but talked it over and just went over all the shit that they'd gone through, and Mascis seemed apologetic and Barlow was pretty much forgiving. So really glad that they're able to do this, and they even shared the stage for a couple of shows before they fully reformed the band, so I actually quite like that bit of history. That did make me smile when I first read through it on Wikipedia. There was also the fact that in 2005 they got a couple of their albums reissued, so they were brought to a more modern audience, and they seemed to hit it off quite well, especially considering that the band, reformed with all 3 of its original people. And the only other thing I have written here before talking about the album is Jay Mascis and the Fog. That is the name of the solo project that Jay Mascis came up with after the release of Handed Over. After the band broke up, he was busy with some solo stuff under that title, so there you go. The album itself, yeah, really, really good. I love how much more modernised it feels. It ditches a lot of the 80s, 90s sort of guff that did start to plague that sound around that time, if I'm being honest, but they're able to shift it. I don't know, I've got my elbow on the arm of the chair because it's comfortable, that's why. There we go, I know the answer. But they're able to shift to a more modern, punky sort of sound. It is a bit slow, but then again, they have aged. However, it's more of a slow burn, but it doesn't really fade away, if that makes sense. It's still got really great guitar work, the bass work is nice, and it's nice to just have all the band working together again as a trio. Jay Mascis has certainly dished his ego, and he honestly sounds a lot better for it, I think. And Lou Barlow's still great on bass, Murphy's still amazing on the drums. Still really good shit from all 3, and obviously really well produced too. My favourite song goes to I Got Lost, and honestly, I quite enjoy this album. I think it's a really good way to cap off the second part of this 3-part finale. And yeah, really glad they reformed and put out honestly an absolute banger. I really enjoyed a lot beyond. And that'll about do it. Next thing I'll see you for will be tomorrow night, PPW vs AVW. I still need to set up the card, but I am working with my counsel on it. I was going to work with him on it last night, but I stayed up a bit too late to complete Psychonauts 2, which reminds me, by the way, I'm not going to be doing Peggle immediately this week because I really want to focus on editing the Psychonauts 2 Let's Play, because that's going to take a while to do. Of all the video VODs I've done, I've only done the first one, and I've just started on the second one yesterday, so I really need to get to work on those, which is not going to be easy considering I'm going to still be putting out videos this week as well. Good lord. And also, yeah, tomorrow night, PW vs AVW, and Wednesday, Ultimate Fighter episode, probably. Thursday, Music of the Week, probably. Friday, nothing. It's going to be nice to take a weekend off for a change, but yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow night. As always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye-bye.